they need to implement?
Okay, so let me say that we are currently engaged in discussions with the management and board of directors representatives on the airport, Greenland Airports Authority. And it's the fact that this came out in the public means that I'll have to address part of it. Our view is that the airport is a state-owned enterprise. The government has taken a decision and made public pronouncements that no workers will suffer any loss of income or be sent home. The Greenland Airports Authority has been performing exceedingly well over the past few years. And the nature of our discussion is to ensure that the workers do not suffer any loss of basic pay while we continue to engage in discussions as to where else there can be reduction in costs. We are confident that given as I say, as a state-owned enterprise, and given the ability of the airport as time goes along to recover, that it will be in a position, or it ought to be in a position, to make the necessary resources available, or find the necessary resources to ensure that workers continue to receive their basic pay. Don't forget that the private sector, and there are members in the private sector, businesses in the private sector, who have not sent anyone home, despite the fact that they have significant drop in revenues, despite the fact that they are operating at a loss. But they understand the importance of keeping their employees gainfully engaged to receive their basic income. And here we have to once again praise the St. George University, a private sector company whose objective is the maximization of profit, whose objective is profit motive driven. Yes, they are providing a service, but they are into this business with the objective of making a profit. The vast majority of workers did not work for a long period in terms of actual work. None of the workers suffered any loss of income, whether they were working or they were at home. The majority of them were at home. And these are true discussions with the union, because the company understood and still understand the possible impact that a loss of income can have on their employees and the wider Grenadian community, especially in a context where a number of people are currently unemployed. So the income of those who are employed right now, in many cases, has to be stretched. There are more demands on those income. And we are hopeful that in our continued engagement with the airport authorities, that we'll be able to stave off any reduction in whatever form in the workers' basic income. We are prepared to continue the discussion and engaged in different probabilities and possibilities, but with the sole objective, our main priority, and if the airport objective, and we would like to believe that that's the objective, is to provide that avenue to ensure that workers are not made worse off. We are sure that the airport can find a way around this. As we said, we all know that the crisis that we are going through right now will not last forever. And there's more light at the end of the tunnel, and the lights are getting brighter. And the airport as a gateway to Grenada and from Grenada is at the center of the great possibility for rebounding. Yes, it will take a while. It may take a while. So this is the nature of discussion that we have been holding. We did not go public with it, as you would recognize, but I'm engaged in this discussion because the airport sent out a press release and you have asked about it. So yes, there's an engagement. And our objective, as we expect to be the objective of the airport also, and we do not expect the airport to just take a profit motive-driven approach and just keep looking at this bottom line, because there's a social responsibility that the airport as a state-owned enterprise has. And especially at the point where at the Morris Bishop International Airport, in which many Grenadians in the teens and 20s, 30-something years ago, or 40 years ago, gave a lot of community service to the building of an international airport. Why am I making this connection? I'm making this connection because as a state-owned enterprise and as the Morris Bishop International Airport, there's a greater responsibility on the board of directors and the management to do everything that is possible to ensure that the workers do not suffer. And I'm saying that there's an example of St. George University. So it will be interesting to see how the Airports Authority, state-owned enterprise owned by the people and government of Grenada, an entity that will be able to carry itself and recover whatever expenses it may have to go into now to meet the operation costs of the workers, even in the context of whatever assistance government may have given or continue to give. And we had raised with them that particular approach, and we are hopeful that these will be used towards ensuring that the workers continue to receive their basic pay. We all aware that the airport has gone into a loan in terms of its development, and keeping the workers employed, not just employed, but keeping them receiving an income should be part of that investment. So we are hopeful. As I said, we are engaging in this discussion because the airport made it public, and you have raised it. So there are other things I can go into, but out of due respect for the process and due respect for the people involved who represents the airport at the moment, those who are engaging with us, I think it would be only prudent just to address the broad outlines without going into specifics as to what concerns, cares, etc. that we may have. Only to repeat that our objective, whatever compromises that will be made relative to other aspects, our objective, and we are hopeful that that's the continued objective of the airport, is to ensure that the workers continue to receive a basic pay without any reduction in their basic pay.
So with all these things happening, RBTT, public officers, teachers, the Airports Authority, Spice Isle Beach Resort is still, going through its stages. What do you think this says about the current industrial climate in Grenada? How active it is? How fruitful it is?
It is tense. It is tense. It is. You can feel the atmosphere. You can feel there is a tenseness and uncertainty and anxiety, expectation, mistrust, distrust in the atmosphere. Yes, by and large, not just by and large, a lot of employers in the private sector have been working collaboratively with the labor movement, with the different varying unions. You also have the issue of the GCNA, right? The GCNA, that's the Banker General, Commercial Industrial Workers Union. So there are challenges. And in a number of those instances, these challenges become more contentious when there is an approach which seems to speak about, in this COVID period, workers are vulnerable and we can dictate the pace. But we have a history of resilience. We have a history of pride. We have a history of dignity. Many of us grew up going to school without having a proper meal and without complaining. Many of us, all right, have experienced, the vast majority of workers in this country, in growing up and even in adulthood, have had to keep their face straight, right, without giving any expression, despite the inner turmoils that we are going through, despite the challenges that we face to make a decent living. Yes, because given the salaries of our people and given the cost of living, the vast majority of workers and working class family have just been able to basically survive, have not been able to improve the standard of living, have been living from paycheck to paycheck. And we carry ourselves with dignity. So any employer who believes or who thinks that because we are in this particular period, that we are going to bow or we are going to beg, that will not happen. We will make compromises, but we will watch you in your eyes and make those compromises on mutual grounds, on mutual respect. So engage us. And that is where the government went wrong. The government felt that it could just bully its way. And then some of them want to speak about what is moral responsibility and legal responsibility. The collective agreement is a signed agreement. And if you want to make a change, you engage us in discussion. And then there could be the process of negotiations, but you ought not to be able to say and be allowed to get away by saying that, look, I just can't afford it, or my priorities are different, and you just take it without an engagement. Because the other spending, as a matter of prioritizing, the human resources are extremely important. In some instances, and I want to repeat this, in many instances, the public officer is the one in their household who is carrying their household. So there's more demand on that public officer's income. And the average pay, if you was to take off what one would call the outliers, because there are some people, political appointees and favoritism that gets a hefty and handy salary. If you were able to exclude these, the average pay is about $1,500, $1,200, especially in the public sector, right? If I was to exclude teachers for a while. But teachers would be about $1,500 or $1,200 average. But you have public officers that get $800 or less a month. You have cases, Blossom and the Liston Public, where the Imanis were paid more than people who have been in employment for years and training them. And we have always battled for the Imanis. The Greater Trade Union Council have always been asking for the Imanis to be treated with dignity, to be given a pathway to permanent employment, to be given a pathway to a decent salary, to be given a pathway to benefits, right? And I recognize that only recently, as probably a political ploy, that at least the Prime Minister has recognized, according to him, after all these years, the manner in which Imanis have been treated, right? But what I'm saying is this year, the climate and our workers and our ordinary people must not be made to feel that they are obligated to any individual or any employer in order for survival. It's not obligated that I have to do everything that you want to do. But we must respect each other and to have a dignified relationship. And we have recognized a deterioration in that relationship.
Do you see, or do you feel like it is bearing fruits, the way that industrial actions are being carried out pressing for the 4%. Government says they do not have it. The MBIA going through their revenue issues, but still workers are concerned about job security. Do you think that it's having an impact and letting the employers know that this is what needs to happen, or else industrial action in full effect?
I am confident that we shall win. And I use win here loosely in the context that a pathway must be found. And the employees, the workers, have all legitimate right to engage in any form of industrial struggle. And I would leave that to the individual organizations and the wider labor movement to decide at any time what is the best form of protest to take. So take, for instance, the government is the one who unilaterally decided on not paying the money. You want to unilaterally decide that you're not paying the 4%. And those who you owe that money to, whose right it is, whose legal right it is to that money, when they take what form of action, you still want to come and tell them what they should do and what they shouldn't do? Why not start by doing what you ought to do? And therefore, the actions undertaken by the public officers and teachers are not designed against any student. Let me address this frontally. Obviously, the role that they perform is to engage with students and to teach them. And therefore, any industrial action, they will be impacted, but it's not designed against them. When we have industrial action and Liat couldn't fly, anyone who wanted to travel out of Grenada could not have traveled, whether or not it was an emergency or not, but we didn't do that against them. When we have industrial action and there's no electricity or there's no water, it's not a fight. It is not a fight against the household. We are also without electricity and without water. And our relatives and friends who may even have emergencies to travel cannot travel and could not have traveled. So the issue here, let us address the central issue. The central issue is the government has unilaterally decided that it is not going to pay. And when we scan the horizon, we see all of the activities appear to be taking place as usual. And in some quarters, it is felt that these are designed as part of political campaign, right? While the country is on lockdown, quote unquote lockdown, and there ain't no mass gathering in terms of political activities, you can make political statement through the manner in which you engage the wider community in terms of government spending and engagements. Right? And therefore, the leaders of the labor movement and the various unions have that responsibility to try to put their finger on the pulse of what is happening. And therefore blossom unto the listening public. Comrade teachers, I salute you. I salute you for your resourcefulness in coming up with different forms of struggle. So they want you to go out, and then they'll come and say they ain't paying you, and there is another battle. But in other words, you see, what you have demonstrated and what we have demonstrated is that we can adapt. I can't be engaged in a dispute with you, and you turn around and tell me how to go about my protest. In the interest of the nation, it is urgently needed for this matter to be resolved. We have demonstrated, the teachers have demonstrated their willingness for engagement. They have asked certain questions of the administration, and they are yet to get their response. Because it is highly likely that if there is an honest and genuine response, it may not be in the interest of the government. Because the figures that they are banding around, both in terms of the implications for the workforce and in terms of the dollar figure, may not be accurate.
Let's take a break, Mr. Lewis, and come back and continue the discussion. This is To the Point with President General of GTAU, Andre Lewis. We'll be right back.
The date, March 25th. The event, international football, as the Spice Boys continue their dream journey to World Cup 2022. The pathway, CONCACAF. It's Grenada versus El Salvador. Follow the broadcast live on GBN Television from 9:30 on Thursday. It's Grenada versus El Salvador. The dream continues. Don't you miss it.
We understand it can be hard getting from the bus terminal to the Kirani James Athletic Stadium just to get your fresh fruits and veggies. But guess what? Your troubles are over. Enjoy a free bus shuttle from the bus terminal to the temporary market at the Kirani James Stadium
every Friday and Saturday until the end of March.
Let us buy local, eat local, and support our local market vendors.
Well, we see from since the last time you here and thing happened, how things go with you and Doc, man?
What do you think? I get through. What?
Backyard.
We papa.
Backyard.
Check them, all of them are money and them, real money. Don't watch Doc soon.
You're nice, you're nice.
So what, Doc moving? I know you all in.
No, Doc not moving, but you know what? I want any of me did starting to catch up with me, you know. Like some kind of retribution, because I find like every morning I get up, I see some strange spot. You want your neck.
Yes.
You one day. You one here. You one like the places where you're not supposed to handle Mark. And I seen Mark and he know what in.
Listen, guys are legal. Legal what's talking you. You see, legal what's talking you.
Let me ask you a question. You don't see anybody around your yard early in the morning when so as you wake up?
Yes.
When legal house, okay?
And it's my neighbor, that to be my neighbor.
That's illegal. That's illegal. Get a bag of salt, sprinkle around the house. You're catching
Watch.
that.
He counting salt until our next year. All they just do talk. Don't say a word.
Well, you can't talk because once they talk, they'll disappear. Join us this Friday on We Culture, and we go tell you about Ligaro. Well, scholars know about Open Door, but we go tell you, we might even tell you about Sukuya, and we're going to tell Risi how to hold that Ligaro. This Friday on We Culture.
Adi.
Welcome back to the Point, speaking with President General of the Grenada Technical and Allied Workers Union, Andre Lewis. Before we go to our viewers and listeners, Andre, we briefly touched on the situation at Spice Island Beach Resort. What's the latest going on at the resort? I know they're still not reopened as yet, but in terms of the industrial action.
Well, in relation to the outstanding matter of the fact that quite a number of workers had expressed their interest in applying the relevant section of the collective agreement, which should allow them to leave the hotel and be paid for their years of service in keeping with the collective agreement. We have a proposal from the company that has offered different forms of competition and engagement. We met with the workers on Tuesday of this week, and we are in the process of re-establishing contact with the company with a view towards finding a settlement and a solution. Our union have always been interested in discussions, dialogue, because at the end of the day, whenever you hit the streets or fight the different battles, you will eventually end up back on the table, and we are quite capable of handling all of them. So we're engaging in different forms.
All right, now let's go to our viewers and listeners who may have comments, questions, queries, concerns for Mr. Lewis. The landline number 435-2041. That's also the WhatsApp number. Please only written messages on WhatsApp, and you can also post your comments, questions, queries, concerns on the GBN Grenada Broadcasting Network's Facebook page and the Grenada Broadcasting Network's YouTube channel. Good morning, caller.
Hi, good morning, Blossom, and to your followers and to Mr. Lewis. It's very sad that at this time that we are we're fighting through a pandemic and we're riding through it, and we all have to ride it together, that we have so much industrial, unease. And it's probably could you hold on a moment, please? I'm getting an echo. One moment, please. One may say come to the territory with the pandemic and the loss of jobs, loss of income, companies are struggling and things of that sort. But there's a point that was made by, and we know the government is in a bind, but there's a point made by Mr. Lewis and made by one of your earlier callers this morning. History. We can never ignore or forget history. And this particular administration has a history of arrogance, a history of disrespect for signed contracts and even court rulings. And we cannot. I heard a lot of talk this morning in your earlier segment. This is not a political issue. This is a bread and butter issue. It doesn't only involve teachers. It involves a wide gamut of public workers, including police officers and the like. The attitude, the posture, no respect. We do what we want, you have to take it. And to me, this is very dangerous because it's also sending a signal to private sector employers. It emboldens them. So if the government could treat all the workers that way and they can't do a thing, we can do it too. So I think this administration has to be very careful. There are many examples. There is Gemma Bain Thomas. There are many others there that show the government total disrespect for contracts, for court rulings, orders given by courts. And to me, this has to be looked at in that whole perspective, and it is not a good one. I urge the government, find a way to work with these people. Someone mentioned this morning a difference between position and leadership. The government is not leading well in this matter.
Okay.
Very, very concerning, I must say. Have a good day, and all the best, Mr. Lewis, in your struggles.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bernard. Any responses, replies?
No, I think it's a reflection and an echoing of a number of the sentiments that have been raised. And yes, it indeed appears to be speaking to a behavioral issue on the part of the administration. And let me just, something the labor movement has raised a number of times, organized labor. To watch our leaders in the national administration and the government blatantly and bluntly and crudely says that Sister Gemma Bain will not be compensated in keeping with the court order because they disagree with the court. A public officer who gave human service to this country, who is home through no fault of hers, is not a disciplinary action that was taken. And to recognize that and that's where the issue of power comes in. I control the purse, the nation's purse, and you are one individual, and I'm not settling with you, although I'm settling with WRB, right? Close to $200 million. And let us say we support Grenada being owned by the people and government of Grenada. What we're addressing here is respect and procedure and process. And what one will call advantage. You know, like when people say this person is taking advantage of an individual, being a bully, right? And many times, it is these sort of issues that influences the way contentious issues may or may not be resolved. Because you look at the pattern of behavior and the question of trust or mistrust is a factor in negotiations and conflict resolutions.
Somebody on WhatsApp is asking, what is the union stance on workers taking the COVID-19 vaccine?
We have advanced that the vaccine is not mandatory and an employer ought not to be able to take disciplinary action against you for not taking the vaccine because your contract of employment, once you have been employed, that was not part of the condition. So that is our view on that aspect. That's the industrial aspect. Must also say, however, we have to also listen to the science. And I have taken the vaccine. So let me make this point here. I have taken the vaccine. Because in spite of the doubts that there may be, and there will all be doubts on different fronts, I have accepted that the reports come out that the vaccine, in this case the AstraZeneca that we have in Greener or wherever else, will at least do the following. I have accepted that it will prevent you from getting sick to the point that you have to stay at home and end up in the hospital if you contract the virus. So that's the premise on which I'm starting. I recognize it was my decision to take the vaccine after listening to everything. Yes, and recognizing that vaccine has been around, and I have heard even before the vaccine relative to COVID came out, there are a number of people who have had concern about vaccines that we have taken over all the years. There are some people who just will not take a vaccine for whatever reason. But I have taken it on the basis of speaking of me, and in discussing it with workers, what we have advanced is your right to not be forced to take the vaccine, meaning that in terms of disciplinary action. But there is nothing wrong, in my view, in a persuasive discussion, which is designed to reason out the following: that if one takes the vaccine and it is able to minimize your risk of possibility of getting sick to the point that you'll be away from work or you end up in the hospital, it is better for the economy, it's better for you and your family. Yes. So that's a principle under which I approach this particular matter.
Somebody else on WhatsApp. Somebody else on WhatsApp is inquiring. Are you saying start over? Mr. Lewis, the government is doing other stuff to campaign for election, but how could this be true when their decision is causing public officers and teachers to be upset? Don't they have to vote too? I'm puzzled, sir, by your utterances. You are saying the same public officers you are representing are liars? They are the ones who provide the figures, and you are here saying the figures are incorrect.
Okay, thanks very much for that, because this is a complex issue. So I'm not saying that what I said is just a yes or no. I'm saying that, in our view, part of the consideration in terms of government's decision, in terms of what it is prioritizing in terms of its spending, has political calculations. That's what I'm saying. I mean, if you take a drive, and there are other concerns, if you take a drive around certain place, you'll see certain roadworks being done. That is certainly, in our view, does not make much economic sense. And in terms of where resources are scarce, it would be better spent on the public officer. And yes, I understand that complex. It appears to be a contradiction. That because the same public officers are voting population. That is correct. But we are because we understand some of the machinations of the political directorates, even outside of COVID, outside of these economic challenges, but in terms of prioritizing and what they may be able to use at the time of election campaign to get advantages, we have had to give consideration to this. Don't forget, the government has advanced that it is willing to pay the retroactive pay as a lump sum at some time in the future. We are aware that originally the government wanted the negotiations that ended in 2022 to end up in 2023, a 4-year period. And our consideration was even along the line that I'm making here, and that was shut down. So I am saying that it's a complex issue, yes, and this is one of the considerations that we have looked at. It's a bread and butter issue, yes, but there are also, in our view, political considerations, and that's certainly is our view on this matter. Because, as I said, lump sum payment, because the government started out by, first of all, indicating that they didn't want to pay any increase at all. We introduced the aspect of deferral but with conditions, because in a number of standing matters, the government has refused to engage in those discussions.
Good morning, caller. Good
morning, Blossom again, and morning to my friend, President Andrew Lewis. I was prompted to call because I'm not satisfied with the way he has said in terms of his decision to take the vaccine. But the thing about it is, I have heard stories of people being forced to take the vaccine on the basis of they'll lose their job if and we know job is scarce right now, if they don't take the vaccine. And I have every reason to believe that is possible. There's some truth in that, because I've been bombarded by messages, especially from the Ministry of Health, saying all kinds of things about the thing, we need to get herd immunity and all of that. And to me, this is one way of forcing people. If you say something to somebody so many times, that's why advertising works, then people then get up and they go and take the thing and not having to deal with the consequence later on. You have so many unknown, as Dr. Velva Paul, who we were able to get to speak to some of us Grenadians. There's so many unknown about this thing. It's not that people are against vaccine or they're for vaccine, but there's certain things we need to clear up. The government promised to the Minister of Health, after Friends of the Earth organized this conversation, that they will have what they call consultation, so that people, before they roll out the vaccine thing. That never happened. And then they're telling people, please, you need to take it because of this and that. And no. We will need to have had a proper series of conversations in which you could hear the broad areas so that they can make a decision like how Andre have made the decision. I have no problem with him. You say like how Mr. Rolo did also. They made the individual after they were in the thing. We are not giving people that opportunity.
Okay.
And then secondly, the other thing about it, in terms of real leadership, and I'm not talking about positional leadership, to me, and I would like Andre to respond to me, there's a lack of real leadership in Grenada at various levels, and maybe there's a bright spot in terms of what the teachers have shown in terms of their resistance and so on. That's only one aspect. But there's lack of leadership in terms of what the crisis that we are facing. Those conflicts that is happening now should not be something that should be allowed to fester. And we should find a way as a people. Please.
All right. Thank you very much, caller. Sir Lewis?
Well, look, let me indicate that in relation to the vaccine, I do believe and I do accept that there are a number of employers that are trying to force workers to take the vaccine. And we have spoken out against this and let the workers know that they cannot be forced to take it, and force here is relative. But I would expect that there will be persuasive arguments or persuasion. One will constantly engage, because there is the health and there is the economics. And we also have that responsibility to explain as we try to get back to a state of normalcy. And we examine the risk factors. What is the best approach? An employer will be concerned about the following, that here what? If I'm able to get my people vaccinated at work, I know that the chances of them getting sick and end up in the hospital, right, or being absent from work for a prolonged period will be minimized. And that will be a major contending factor that the country has to address, and in particular the employers or the owners will have to factor that in. It is not at the expense of health. So you have to make, as the comrade said, informed decisions. But some people have more of a luxury of time than others. In these factors, those things have to be taken into account. So as I've said, is that these are challenges. We shall be engaged with, I'm just making that public, with SGU in terms of discussing a number of matters relative to the safe reopening, what can be done, have engagement with our workers, etc. Right? We intend to continue to play that role in this conversation, and that is where the government has made a serious mistake. They made a mistake by politicizing everything. So all the major committees addressing these national issues is either party activists or people who are sympathetic to the government, and it does not have people who the government may think may have a different view to them. Yes? If there was an all-inclusive approach from day one to address these issues, I am convinced that we would have been in a better position today. And the Minister of Health's latest pronouncement, or one of his pronouncements, which appears to come over like a threat about the possibility of making the vaccine mandatory, although it may have been good intention, but it may not have been the best comment to make. I want to publicly ask all of us who has, especially those who, as I say myself, have taken the vaccine, and those who may wish to engage people with a view to encourage them to take the vaccine. A big stick will not work. A big stick will not work. I have also factored in quickly, Blossom, that I have friends and relatives in different parts of the world, in the United States, UK, Canada, who have taken the vaccine, and I'm not aware of anyone, any significant death coming out of the vaccine. People have been dying, right, ever since, and I am not aware that the millions of people who have taken the vaccine, right, that there is a similar concern about the impact of COVID on them. So I'm just giving you my individual considerations, and that is how I engage other people. I respect their view, but recognizing, and the union recognizing, so that is my view. But the union's concern also has to do with the economy and the health of the worker, and therefore we need to have those sort of engagements.
30 seconds, final thoughts, the way forward?
The way forward is continuous engagement, genuine engagement. Let us continue to talk, but let us talk with a genuine ambition of finding concrete solution, and not I saying that I win and you lose. And also recognizing that there are certain things that I cannot compromise on and you cannot compromise on, meaning the employer and the union. Yes, but I'm confident that we can find a way forward. I will continue to rise out of this and rebound. And on the behalf of the workers of this country again, we continue to give our commitment and ask everyone to remain safe. But please treat us with respect and dignity as the cost of living continues to rise, right? And to make up, just as how there is this appeal to stay salaries, let us have an appeal to minimize, to hold on the profit margin, so as to assist the consumer and the workers in terms of the cost of living. There are ways that these things can be done if we all put our hands together.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lewis. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us today. Appreciate it. Continue to stay safe.
Well, I'm glad to be back. I thought we were supposed to have an engagement where Labour would have been given an opportunity to be heard more regularly. But I'm hoping that your superiors will allow you that continued flexibility so we could be on a bit more regular. Not just
Agreed.
me, but other farmers in the movement.
Agreed. Don't worry, we'll work it out.
Thank you very much.
All right, enjoy the rest of your day and stay safe.
You too. All the best.
President General of the GTAU, Andre Lewis, we thank him so much for being our guest this morning. And thank you to our viewers and listeners for tuning in to The Point. We now get ready for the broadcast of day 5 of the first test between Sri Lanka and the West Indies, live here on Classic 105. Enjoy the rest of your thankful Thursday, and I'll be back tomorrow, God willing. All the best.